Today we're reviewing the latest Parker's Heritage bottle from 2024. It is the 14-year single malt that is finished in Cognac barrels. How is it? Let's go and jump in and see. Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever, and today we are reviewing the Parker's Heritage bottle that comes from Heaven Hill. Now these are typically some of the best barrels that come from the Heaven Hill distillery. Every year it's something a little different. It's almost more of like their experimental line. They've done everything from bourbons, rye, wheated whiskey, cask strength finished, double barreled. Like they've done all different types of things with those Parker's releases. A little bit of background on the Parker's releases, in case you don't know. They're named after Parker Beam, one of the former distillers at Heaven Hill. Unfortunately, Parker Beam passed away in 2017 from ALS, and every year a portion of proceeds from the Parker's Heritage bottles go towards ALS. Now this year's Parker Heritage release, it comes in at 107 proof, great proof. I love that proof. I think it's some of the best whiskey comes out at that proof because it's not too hot, not too watered down. You still get the flavors in there. I think it has a great proof for whiskey. It comes in at $170. That is, rather expensive, but on the Ellie front, it's on the lower end of what Ellie bottles typically cost this time of year. Now this is the 18th edition of the Parker's Heritage release. These barrels, they came from Rickhouse O and Q, and specifically the juice inside. This is a single malt whiskey that they then finished in reconstructed cognac barrels. So they took some cognac barrels, took them apart, reconstructed them into new barrels with also some heavy toast char staves. So the barrel had a combination of those two, and the whiskey sat in that for an additional 4 months. I normally really love the Parker's Heritage releases. Like the Parker's Heritage Double Oak Bourbon that came out 2 years ago is some of the top whiskey I've ever tasted. The Parker's Heritage Rye that came out last year, that won Best Rye of the Year for me last year. However, when I heard the specs on this year's release, I just wasn't that excited. I'm not a big single malt fan, and I'm also not a big finish fan. So when you combine both a single malt with the finished whiskey, it's just not something that I got super excited about, and just felt like this is a bottle that I had to buy. But I was lucky enough to get a sample of this release to try today, and I am still super excited to try it because I have an open mind and I'm always willing to try something once. You shouldn't have an opinion on it until you try it. You may have tried a bunch of single malts and you might dislike them, but maybe this is the single malt that blows your mind away and converts you over. So I'm excited to try this and see how it is. Cheers. So off the nose, I would not guess a single malt. The cognac flavor definitely is the most pronounced note. I'm getting a nice, deep, rich plum note. It's not near to a level of a jam, but there's definitely is that plum note in there. It's not too ripe, but just a traditional plum note. And then a little bit of that milk chocolate from the toasted stave in there. It's not overpronounced like a double oak, like the Woodford double oak. That is like a deep, rich chocolate. This is nowhere near that level either, but there's a little bit of hints of those notes in there too. I'm not getting so much wood on it. I definitely say it's a little bit there. Like it doesn't smell like a young whiskey, but again, at the same time, it doesn't really smell like a 14-year-old whiskey. Yeah, overall, that cognac is the most pronounced note on this, but let's go ahead and jump into the palate and see if that affects anything. Cheers. All right, so that is probably one of the better single malts I've had. You still get the malt on the back end, that breadiness, kind of not hay, but that texture there on the back end. You definitely get the single malt on that front. Yeah, so the front part of it is where that cognac, to me, that sweetness from the cognac, the fruit pops in there. To the mid palate is where you get closer to that milk chocolate, chocolate flavor from the toasted barrels. And then the back end is where I'm getting that, the maltiness of the whiskey is coming on the back end. It does linger a bit there at this 107 proof. You got a little bit of a linger there. It's not necessarily the notes that I want to linger though. Again, I'm not a malt fan, so I don't really want the notes of the malt lingering, but the notes definitely sit there in your tongue after you swallowed it and it's gone for a little bit. Okay, another note that's now coming on the aroma and the palate to me is I'm getting a lot of tea, like a black, earthy, dark tea. That's on the middle of the palate of the nose and towards middle back end of the taste. I'm getting that tea note. I'm now getting a little bit of lemon in there too, like almost feel like I'm drinking a lemon iced tea. Surprised I'm getting that note, but that is a little bit of what I'm getting, just kind of like maybe just take this, add some water to it, and you got yourself a nice good lemon iced tea in the summer. Yeah, that earthiness on the back end is really prominent for me. Not a flavor that I particularly enjoy, but yeah, I'm really shocked how much fruit note I'm getting on the front end there. Then it just transitions to me into that earthy note, tea note, and then finishing off with that malt. Okay, so before I get into my final thoughts on this Parker's Heritage release from 2024, if you're enjoying this content and you want to see more things like it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any content going forward. So this Parker's, what are my final thoughts? To me, I think it is a step down from other Parker's Heritage releases, and that is solely for just because what it is. It's a single malt whiskey that's finished. Maybe if you love finished whiskeys and you just are to die for single malts, this would be the one that would just light your socks off. But for me personally, it's just not something that I particularly enjoy or chase after. So I really enjoyed the rye from last year and the Parker's Double Barrel more than this release. I am happy that I was able to try it and experience this whiskey. But for you guys out there, $170 is the MSRP. Secondary is a lot higher, like I think $400 plus, maybe around $400 on this bottle now. I wouldn't buy it for even MSRP at $170. If you're a single malt, you love cognac, maybe go out there and give it a shot. But if you're more of a traditional bourbon fan, maybe do a bar pour if you want to experiment a little bit. But I don't think this is anything that you're necessarily missing out on. Maybe try some other single malts out there first to see if it kind of wets your palate a little bit. But if this is one that you missed this year, because these allocation bottles are always impossible to find. You might get lucky and get one of them. It's just really hard to get these with just how many of them are produced and how much high demand there are for them. If you missed out on this one, you shouldn't have too much FOMO. I think it's a fine pour. I'm enjoying it, but it's not one to lose sleep over. So that's my review of the Parker's Heritage from 2024. But if you're enjoying this content, before you head out, check out this video or this one. And until next time, cheers.